Kevin.
What's up, Mr. Leo?
How are you, man?
I'm great. How are you?
Good to see you. I appreciate you doing this with us. This is going to be super cool. I'm real excited. Been working on this for quite a while. Sit down and talk to you and kind of dive into what you do. And of course, everybody knows the podcast is called Soar to Soaring. Soar is more muscle, and then soaring. And what we do is we talk to athletes, we talk to military veterans, and we talk to business owners. That's you.
Okay.
On all those aspects of what it takes to succeed and the things that we learn in the military, the things that we learn on the baseball field, on the football field, wherever that may be, that you can't get anywhere else, and how that hits the road with what you do. Okay. So that's what we're going to be talking about.
All right, let's do it.
What do you do?
I have a consulting firm that helps people figure out how government contracting works.
Okay.
So that the best description is that I used to buy things for the federal government. I was what's called a contracting officer.
Okay.
And I started a company. One did not exist before I found out after I started that no one else was doing this. So it took a while. That what we do is help.
Now wait, I'm going to interrupt. One did not exist, as in you didn't have one, or there just wasn't one.
There was no company full of former contracting officers who was specifically started to help people understand what does a contracting officer do.
Wow.
There were people who have been contracting officers who work for different organizations. There was training up on how to do the job, but there wasn't a team of 10 of us who help companies as well as the government understand what the other side is thinking. Because we sell to the government and we also help companies sell to the government. And we used to work for the government. So in that little narrow niche, which by the way, the government buys everything. Most of us don't see it every day, but the roads we drive on, the air we breathe, the military, there's so many things that are just handled. And whether we debate how big the budget is or not, cut it in half, it's still a giant number. And literally since before the Revolutionary War, the very first government contract was to buy food for the revolutionary soldiers. So this concept's been around for a long time. That's what we do, is help people understand how does this process work. So we have training, we have consulting, we have a podcast, we have lots of things that we do within that space.
So you work from both sides.
I do. And we're named after the Skyway Bridge here in Tampa, because the idea was to be a bridge from government to industry and from government to contractors. And what I found that after I left government, I realized there were a lot of things that I didn't know about how contractors work. So now it's both ways. It's the government doesn't understand what the contractors think. Contractors don't understand what the government thinks. And that lack of context between them creates a lot of inefficiency, a lot of arguments, a lot of frustration, etc. That's the problem we solve. We add that context to both sides.
In order to do that, though, you did work for the government.
Correct.
So out of college, and your degree was again English comp or English lit?
Art, German, and English.
Art, German. So German, you picked an easy language to learn.
Yes. And not as useful as other languages I could have taken, but that's a different story.
Right. So art, German, and English.
Correct.
And you went to school up north.
Correct.
Where'd you go to school?
Muskingum University, small school in southeastern Ohio.
Okay, and you're from that area.
I grew up in Philadelphia, but I was living out in Ohio at the time.
Okay.
So having worked for the military, we've now lived all over the place.
And then out of college, you started working for the government.
Correct.
Which gave you the understanding of how that infrastructure, that architecture, if I'm using the wrong vernacular, you'll tell me.
It works.
How all that system works.
Correct.
Which enables you then to come out of the government. You don't work for the government anymore. You work for yourself. And bridge the gap between the one that's trying to sell to the government and the one the government's trying to buy from the people that are selling it.
Correct. For them to understand each other. That's the problem that we solve.
That's okay. So we wrap all of this in athletics. So would it be fair to say, without your experience working as a government contractor, working on the government side of it, like without the experience of playing college baseball, without the experience of playing pro football it would be very difficult to do what you do without that intimate knowledge.
It'd be impossible.
You could not do that.
Correct. Because what gives me the perspective is I have done it.
Right.
And so, for example, I came out of college with an English degree. Who knew that being able to write and communicate well would be a key factor in doing this job well? I learned that by doing it, by having been a contracting officer. Understanding when you use a particular word in a contract, how is it going to hit people? Well, you have to understand how to use the language well. And I since went on and got a master's degree in business and stuff like that. But something simple like understanding how to apply language to federal contracting, you have to do that. And you have to do it from, in this case, the government side, because you're writing the contracts for contractors to sign. Otherwise, you're on the outside looking in. And that's the difference. There were lots of companies that were on the outside looking in, training people how to sell to the government, and people have been buying from the government for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't change that part. What we changed was the ability of both sides to understand each other and to realize that the other side's not crazy. They're following this rule. The contractor's not crazy. They just have this puzzle to solve that as a contracting officer, I never knew about until I started owning a company. I realized, wow, payroll is really hard to manage.
Right.
It's not one of those things you can just figure out yourself.
Right, exactly. So when they say, I want to go coach baseball, it's like, well, did you play? Do you know what it feels like to throw on your third day out of the bullpen? Because you wouldn't do that if you knew what that felt like. So you know what it felt like. You knew what it took because you did it, and it allows you to do what you're doing, connect the dots, essentially.
Bingo.
How are there other companies like you?
Not exactly like us. I mean, there are consulting firms that help people understand how government contracts work. There are contracting officers who work for companies. As far as I can tell, and I've been doing this long enough, it's 2012, so 13 years now. And our playbook is out for the world to see, and no one has picked up exactly what we do. Part of the challenge for that is it's a niche market. Most companies don't sell to the government. The ones that do don't need our insight because they may be selling. If you sell to the government and you sell small items through a government purchase card, which is basically it's a credit card, under $10,000, that feels like a regular transaction. You don't need us.
Okay.
But when you get into a situation where you do need us, then you have to know we exist. That was the hard part of building this company, is that we had to make sure the niche people who needed to know we exist did. And that took a long time. That's the 13 years that we're just now starting to get the momentum behind.
Well, that almost sounds like the recruiting process.
There you go.
You've got to go win. You've got to be able to do your job. You have to know how to do your job. But in order to get to the next level, whether that be college or you want to make the high school team, somebody's got to notice you.
Right.
So how do you do that as an athlete? So I'm going to ask you, how did you do that as a business?
The biggest part is targeting. Figure out who is your customer.
Okay.
Just talking to people for the sake of talking to them is noise. Just spending a lot of time talking to a lot of people is noise. Instead of trying to make a lot of things that everybody just likes, make a few things that a few people love. And Say that again. So instead of making a lot of things that a lot of people just like,
make
a few things that a few people love.
Now I'm going to wrap that in baseball, you're right. Don't do a lot of things. You don't have to do a lot of things. You have to do a very few things really, really well.
Correct. That's how you get noticed.
If
you do one thing exceptionally well.
Right. Hit with power. Throw with velocity.
Consistently.
Right. Over time, diving. It's a vertical challenge to get that instead of, okay, I need to play first, I need to play third, I need to hit this, I need to pitch that, I need to do that. You're just noise in the background because you don't do enough in any one thing better than anyone else.
Correct. And for us, our podcast that we started in 2014, and we did it every single week for 10 years.
2014, so we're 10 years ago.
It's now coming up.
25, so 11 years.
So it's on its 11th year now. And episode 495 comes out tomorrow. And it's Contracting Officer podcast is not something you would listen to unless you're in this space.
Yeah.
And the idea of knowing who your target market is, who would listen to that? Those are the people that I go onto LinkedIn and I see if you're a contracting officer, if you work in the government contracting, if the title contracting attorney is in your title on LinkedIn, that's a person that needs to know about it. For me to go and buy a billboard along I-95 is a waste of time and money because most people don't care. You have to get noticed by making a few things. Okay, it's a lot now. It's a 495. But once a week, that's a few. That's a small number, right?
Yeah.
But we're much more targeted on make something that people love. And it took us, I don't know, a couple of years to get the first 1,000 really rabid fans. And we now are at 1.5 million downloads. We now have, 350 paying subscribers. Wow. It took a long time. But it's because for those 350 people, they love it.
Right.
But we're not Joe Rogan.
Right. But that's a process. That's a process for future payoff.
Correct.
So that's what we call delayed gratification.
Yes.
So you're not going to get it now. You're going to have to, grind and be blistered, and you have to commit to the process. And almost, would you think don't even think about, don't even look at the payoff at the end, because it's really all about what I'm doing today.
It is for lots of reasons. The biggest one is that if you're thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow, you're not thinking about what you're doing today.
Yeah.
It's very easy to think, well, if I do this, this is going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
That's part of being a small business, part of being a human, frankly, is you don't know what's going to happen. But particularly as a small business, I thought, here's a great example. I thought our podcast, it was free for the first 10 years. And I thought that it would drive people to us, because that's what people do, is you make a podcast and people find out about you.
We're making one right now.
Exactly, right? Well, it turns out, and that has worked for lots of people.
Yeah.
You get a podcast, you have advertising, and that's how you basically have like a radio show, right? It's one way to do it. As it turns out, our customers were getting such value out of the free podcast that they were using it for training. So when I told them, I don't want to make this an advertising heavy podcast, so I'm going to start charging for it. And they went, okay, it's worth it.
Because the value was so great.
Correct.
You did something so much better than anyone else, this vertical kind of alignment. They're like, cool, I'm down.
And that was very different than I thought 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So that you got to change your mind based on what's actually happening. What are you seeing right now? And so going back to your point of if my plan is that I'm going to have 5 million listeners and I'm going to make $50,000 a month on advertising, you don't know that.
Right.
Just make good content today.
Well, and you won't even know if that'll make money. If you're setting out, it's like when kids say, I want to play in college. It's like, whoa, wait a minute now. Wait a minute.
There's a lot of steps between here and there.
There's a lot of steps between here and there, big guy. And what college are you talking about? Because I can send you to Saskatchewan or Juneau, Alaska, where the sun sets at noon. We can do that. That's not a problem. So you need to be, a little bit more targeted, back to yours,
yep,
with what you're trying to do. Were there times where in the beginning where you're like, I don't know about that? I don't know about that.
Not in the beginning.
No?
Still. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
As an entrepreneur, as recent as, yesterday, I had an idea that I thought was going to work. It didn't. Now, am I going to change the trajectory of the company? No. But that feeling of, I don't know if this is going to work, that's business. That's life. And again, I'll jump on the sport thing. You don't know what's going to happen after you hit that ball.
Right.
You could have squared it up, and that center fielder is going to run it down. You can't control that.
Right.
You got to square it up. And it's the same thing. I have to do the things that I think will work. And then I take the feedback and go, oh, that didn't work. Then stop doing it.
Stop doing it. Right. If it didn't work, stop doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The famous doctor thing. Doc, it hurts when I do this with my arm. Well, don't do that.
Stop doing it.
Yeah. Well, we do that often. And actually, I've worked with your son for many, many years now, who's a senior in high school. And we've just instituted this with him and a few other guys, the Sunday kind of check-in. And I wrote about this in my book that I published. And you've written 1 or 2 books?
2 so far.
2 so far. Those who adjust win.
Yep.
All the time, every time. There is no getting around it. Those who adjust win. And when I was a college coach and, we all that kind of stuff, you see these guys that just, they can't get out of what they do. They have a hard time adjusting. And if you ever are close to a college dugout and you're in there for a long enough period of time, you will hear a coach scream this word, adjust. And everybody that's college people that are out there, you're shaking your head up and down. Flipping adjust. You got to be kidding me. How many times you going to throw, the out and miss? So you got to make the adjustments based off, well, first, you got to figure out what you're going to do. Then you got to go put that process is going to do. And then you're assessing.
Right.
And for us, it's an SOS process. I'm sure it's probably the same for you. It's SOS is an acronym, obviously. It's subjective. You look at kind of the data. So are we making money off this, or are we getting customers, or are we getting whatever metric you're looking at, okay? Then the O is going to be objective, where you kind of look at it going, do I think that's good? Is that good? The experience will tell that. And the final S is kind of the survey, asking the people around you outside of me what they think for their honest opinion. And for an athlete, you just ask the athlete. You make an adjustment with a swing, and many athletes will nod up and down, say, yeah, not a problem. And you're like, okay, do you really? No, I hate this. Don't. Boom, then you move on. So that's a bit of an iterative process. Would that be fair to what you're doing in navigating that growth of that podcast? Because 1.4 million, that's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people, and it's taken a long time to get there.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to get distracted by, it's over 1 million people. What I love about our podcast now is I know who those 300 subscribers are. I have a relationship with them. Like I know them by name.
So that's a big adjustment to go, though, to say, I have 1.4 million people that are listening to this, but we need to adjust. Go to a paid, you're going to lose a lot of them.
Right.
How many did you lose?
Enough that we probably got, if you look on our Apple Podcast reviews, we got like 10 one-star reviews. The 1-star was because we're charging for it.
Yeah.
Not that the content was bad, but it was because we changed and they didn't want to adjust.
Okay. But what you gained out of that was what?
Well, the biggest thing was, from a business perspective, is we're able to get revenue without having advertisers. Because there's two ways to make content. You can make content where an advertiser pays for it.
Yep.
Or you can make content where your customer pays you for it.
Right.
The nice thing about the customer piece is now you have a relationship with your customer. You're making the content for the customer. Technically, you're making the content for the advertiser. If the advertiser's paying you.
The advertiser's paying you, correct.
And there's the reality of, if a product is free, it's because you're the product.
Yeah.
So if a podcast,
well, like you said before we started,
exactly.
Facebook is free because you're the product.
Ads are paying for it. If a podcast is free with advertisers, those advertisers are paying for access to you.
Right.
So you're the product. And that's a perfectly viable business model. It's not one that I wanted to build the company around, because what I like being able to do is make one of our customers says, hey, can you make a podcast about data rights and federal contracts? Yes, we can. And I made that for her. I know what her name is. And I know she works in Ohio. Like, that relationship is more important to me with my customer. That's the difference. 1.4 million people, lots of people who like something that I didn't know, versus 300 people who love something and I know them personally.
So you whittled it down, and I'm sure that's scary to say.
Oh, heck yeah. I didn't know it was going to work.
Scary to say, look, we're going to change it. It's like, holy crap, you know? And now you do this really well you found a niche, you found a fit.
Right.
We talk about, and I actually talked to your son about this, talking last year with him about it. College, playing baseball in college or playing sports in college, you can really get overwhelmed with the facility and the turf and the color of the uniforms and all that kind of stuff. Do you fit the culture? Do you belong there? Are you an Eagle? Are you a Mustang? Are you a Seminole? Because certainly in baseball, and we're going to move into this with what we're talking about, and in any good sports program, they build a culture. This is the way we do business. This is the way we practice. This is the way we dress. This is what it means to be a part of this. So when you wear that uniform, the guys before you, there's meaning and purpose behind everything that you do. And for good, not all programs like that, but for good programs, that is something that is coveted and taken very, very seriously. In business, in your experience, how does culture fit into what you do, building Skyway Acquisitions into a thing that has its own culture? What is that?
So the culture for Skyway is actually on our website. It's under our values page, and we call it the 7 cubed. There are
7.
Yeah, so there's
cubed.
7 cubed is there's 7 core values, there's 7 keys, and there's 7 non-negotiables.
7 core values, 7 keys, and 7 non-negotiables.
Right.
That sounds like culture to me. Go ahead, keep going.
And so for example, one of the non-negotiables is you don't knowingly waste time. We may not know we're wasting time. We may try to put out a new product, try something new. It doesn't work. Once we learn it doesn't work, now we're knowingly wasting time. And that's a non-negotiable, meaning I will fire you if you don't do that. If you don't change your behavior, right? Another one is no gossip.
Yeah.
If people, and we put it in writing. What's that rule about expectations? Like if an expectation that's not communicated is just a thought.
Just a thought. Right?
Nobody can do anything with that, right? So you have to set your expectations.
Right.
And that's what the core values are, things like solving clients' unique puzzles and using empathy. Like one of my favorite sayings is, if something doesn't make sense, get curious before you get furious. And that's
if something doesn't make sense, and in your business,
right,
there's probably a lot of that.
Yeah, just
if something doesn't make sense, get curious before you get furious.
Because you look at your employee and say, why did they do that? And instead of getting mad, again, you ask them, what did I miss? What caused this to make sense to you? That's being curious. If you're curious, you're going to ask questions. If you're furious, you're going to make statements. What's wrong with you? That's a statement. Versus, what led you here? It's a question.
That's a very, very good coach thing. You know that, right? That's a very good coach.
I read a lot of books.
before a coach barks. Now there's times when coaches bark.
Right.
Okay. And sometimes the order is reversed. Sometimes we bark and then troubleshoot or solve, and sometimes we solve and then troubleshoot. That depends a lot on the athlete and the situation and things like that. But that's a very coachy thing where you got to kind of get. It also kind of leans into the 5 why principle that Toyota was built on. Something's a problem. You just why before you lose your mind, why, and you'll end up finding out, wow, we didn't know that was a problem or couldn't be a problem.
Exactly.
So you're building a culture based off things you want and things you also want to avoid in your pillars.
Yeah. I'm really big on a non-negotiable means this is what we don't want to see.
Right.
This is the culture that we have doesn't allow for these things, and like do the right thing. If you don't know what, and the subtitle of that is, if you don't know, ask. Most of the time we know.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have to write a policy for everything under the sun. We have a non-negotiable of do the right thing. And there have been a few times where somebody didn't know, and guess what? Because I got curious instead of furious, I was able to figure, okay, next time that happens, here's what you do. Problem solved.
Right. And see, that's defensible. When you say, when you're on the do the right thing, then you ask to explain, I can defend it if I'm doing the right thing.
Right.
That's how you know you're doing the right thing.
There you go.
I'm able to defend it. No, I'm doing this because this is the right thing to do for this particular customer who has this very unique challenge.
Yep.
And then kind of on you go. That's cool. And how many employees do you have?
7.
7 employees.
Yep.
So not a big employee basin, not a large employee basin.
I measure not by the number of people, but by the impact we have. And I'll quote Jeff Bezos on this one. You don't get extra credit for headcount.
No, you don't.
Which is funny for Amazon's a giant company, right? But they're hyper productive. They're not the biggest company in the world from a headcount perspective, but they're very productive. Same idea. Is that I focus on what can we get done with the team that we have.
And that speaks back to then do something really, really well.
Correct.
Instead of doing a lot of things very, very average. So I'm assuming your employees, that's a hard find for you. Would you think?
It is, and we also have people that are 1099s or subcontractors that aren't quite employees yet. We have one of our core values is we start small and grow together, and so a lot of folks will work part time for us to make sure it's the right fit. There's a right fit for them and right fit for us. We're a different organization, and you're right. People are hard to find. They're not all in Florida. We literally have employees in every time zone. They're all over the place.
Yeah, so you get remote workers, whether that's sales or marketing or whatever that is.
All over the map.
Yeah, you get it all over the place.
And they all do different things. And what I found, one of the concepts we use a lot, going back to what really works for us, one of our favorite acronyms we developed, figure out what works, do more of that.
Figure out what works and do more of that.
So if you break that into an initialism, right? So it's FOWWDMOT. And of course, former military, you foul de mot. I made a word out of it, right?
Foul de mot.
So that's a verb. It's like, how do we foul de mot that? And again, that's a secret language. Like, what did you say? It's not even a word. But when I say that in the Skyway team, what that means is figure out what works, do more of that. And of course, the subtext is stop doing the stuff that didn't work.
That
idea of everything we do in the company, what worked, whether it's sales or marketing or serving clients or updating our website. We have a form on our website. We figured out how to make it work effectively, and now we market it.
Right.
There's that mindset of figure out what works, do more of that. And that applies to, frankly, it applies to so many different things that we have to have the discipline to consistently do.
Yeah.
If you're doing the wrong things a lot, or you're practicing the wrong thing a lot, it's not helping you. Figure out what works.
And that it's interesting because again, I'll go back to from the coach's perspective, from the athlete perspective. You get wrapped in, you see the bright shiny object over there,
right?
And you want to go see that and go do that and that kind of thing, and you forget about what you do every day is so critically important. So from a hitter's perspective or a pitcher's perspective, we break it down into a week. That's it. So in the season, it goes. For a high school guy, it's going to go Sunday to Sunday. For a college guy, it's usually Monday to Monday.
Okay.
And what did you do last week? And this is our evaluative process. And I'm telling you that to get to something. Our evaluative process is what happened this lesson? So what's the goal? What are you trying to get out of the week? You're trying to get 4 hits or 5 hits, or you're trying to get a win, whatever it is. Now, what happened? Reevaluate what happened. Did you get your butt kicked? Did you get, are you 0 for the week? Did you get the win? So it's, if you got your goal for the week, so if you break the entire season down into weeks, it's like going to the moon.
Okay.
The mission to the moon wasn't a straight line. It was massive course corrections with the first goal of getting the rocket off the planet.
Right.
Okay, check. Now what's next? And then you go and you have these little tiny incremental steps that once we achieve that, we go on. And that's the course correction. That's that iterative process. And guys in baseball, football, all that, the season will just kind of linger on. We break it down to a week. So let's say you're playing, right? And you're a baseball hitter. You want to get 4 hits a week. What happened last week? Well, I got 1 hit. Why? Did you get you out? Or did they get you out? So that's a conversation we have.
Right.
Well, okay, if you get you out, what happened? Oh, my shoulder's coming out again, or I'm fading through the zone. So now you go into the next week and you fix that. Now, if you get, I got 5 hits last week. That's great. Do more of that.
Right.
Get back on the tee, do the exact same thing you did. So either we're reinforcing that process, do more of that, to your point, to continue the hitting streak, or we are able to look and quickly, nope, we can pivot. I need to work on my lead shoulder. I need to work on this. Maybe I need to take it down, whatever it is. And you can quickly move through that. So in the process that you're talking about, in that acronym that you have, how do you measure that? Is that something that you're kind of looking afar, or is it much more granular to see do more than that kind of thing? Is it specific, or is it more thematic as it moves?
It's going to be both. We have everything that we do, we want to figure out, is it working or not?
Right.
And so we use what's called a strategic intent. Well, I've heard it called strategic intent. And go back to your moon analogy. The ultimate example of strategic intent is when Kennedy said, we'll go from the Earth to the moon by the end of this decade.
Right.
From X to Y by when? That's strategic intent, right? So every one of our things that we work on, we want to increase sales from $25,000 a month to $30,000 a month by June 1st.
Okay.
Or I want to have 5 customers to 7 customers by the end of this week. Like, you have to have an X to Y by when.
So call that the season for an athlete.
Exactly. So that foul de mat is what got you there, to your point. The foul de mat is figure out what works, do more of that. You see, okay, we got from 5 to 8. What did we do? The big factor to consider here is the things that are in your control.
Yes.
Because you may have just gotten lucky.
Right.
It may have,
right.
And it's very easy in business to take credit for things that you didn't actually cause.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy. The number of times that I thought, this is the new standard because it happened once. And then I go down this path and go, oh, that was a unicorn. I didn't know it.
Baseball players are the worst at that. They run a barrel off somebody and think they got a hit. It's like, no. Okay, yeah, I'll give you the win, but yeah. Come on, man.
They threw you a meatball down the middle.
Come on. Yeah, that was a mistake that you capitalized on. Yeah, right. Absolutely. Okay, so this is an ongoing process for you then?
Yes.
And do you train your people to do that too? Are they working in that mindset?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is not from afar. This is a permeated culture. This is what we do.
Yes, foul de mat is what we do.
And if you're in, be in, do this.
Yes. You're either all in or you're in the way.
Or you're in the way, right. Do you have to cut many people?
Yeah. Do I have? Well, have to is the wrong word. I choose to. Right. And sometimes they leave on their own. We have a probationary period. Most of it is, can you get on board with our culture? Because at the end of the day, that's what makes us so special. What makes a company special is the interaction of its people. Because if I'm without a group of people with me, I'm just a dude with a dream. I'm just a dude working, which is fine.
Right.
But the reality is that the team is what makes us exponentially more impactful to the world than we could be by ourselves. That team is glued together by culture. So when someone comes in and doesn't fit the culture, and this might sound melodramatic, but when I fire them, it's because they broke a non-negotiable or they did not follow one of our core values. All the other stuff we can work around. Like, if you don't know the job, we wouldn't have hired you in the first place.
Right. You don't expect that.
Right.
Because that's always going to be a learning curve.
Exactly.
Right?
But when
I don't know how to play I know how to play baseball, but if I don't play in college, you don't know the speed it takes. You don't know what There's a learning curve.
Yeah, exactly.
Steep one. Okay.
Yes.
So that sounds like, and your son has heard this from me thousands of times, performance and attitude. That's the two things that we work on. Performance. Other than that, it all falls within those two things, or it really doesn't matter. Can you play? And can we work together?
Right.
And in sports, it is really one of those things where we don't really retrain. We just rehire. You cut them.
Yep.
And you wish them the best and you help them along. But you find if you keep folks that don't fit the culture, you'll either have weight inside the culture that you don't need, because the culture needs to be an effervescent feeling thing. You don't need to go into a room and feel weight of someone that doesn't belong. And literally in the locker room, you can feel an effervescent locker room or you can feel a weighty locker room. Well, if you got a weighty locker room, you got a couple of guys that don't belong there.
Right.
And you got to get rid of them. They may be good guys. Or you have a cancer. You have a tumor. Got to get the tumor out.
Yeah.
Got to get them somewhere else. Is that similar to what kind of goes on?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have an effervescent culture? Everybody's bought in?
I think of it as being talent dense. You're dense on talent.
Nice.
If you're not dense on, by the way, that's from Netflix. That's their term. There's a Netflix. None take credit for that.
Right.
But the idea of talent density is how much talent do you have in your organization, and when the density of that talent is really well put together, you have a person who doesn't fit there because they don't have the. And by the way, talent isn't just I know how to do government contracting. It's do you fit our culture? Do you communicate well? We have an entire, we call it the Skyway Way, and it's probably a 20-page document, has all kinds of examples of when we say write well, what do we mean? When we say communicate well, what do we mean?
Okay.
Like we actually have examples just so people can understand this is what our expectations are. And so when that talent density is there and the team is, to use your term, they're effervescent, it's going to feel heavy because when somebody is not a fit, they're going to drag that talent density down. And
yeah.
Now they're not. It's going to feel like we can only go as fast as this person is going to let us.
As our weight.
Exactly.
Right.
It's like a sea anchor on your boat.
Yeah. No. 100%. And it's hard. It's difficult. And it's your company, and you lead this thing. And there's a different perspective.
It's how my kids eat.
Right. It's how you kids eat. It's a big daggum deal, and it's how your employees' kids eat.
Exactly.
And that's a massive responsibility. And from that perspective, as someone who is in leadership, knowing you for a while now, you're a lead within the unit guy. You're
Correct.
not a lead from the hill guy.
Right.
And we talked about this before we turned the cameras on. You don't mind working 10 hours, 12 hours. You put the time in.
I do.
And probably more maybe than your employees do.
I actually track my time. Believe it or not, it's one of the many things I do. Speaking of, I break my work week into a week, and I balance the different things I do. Some is sales, some is finance, some is leading the team, etc. And on an average, again, I don't think of it this way, but there are lots of 70-hour weeks.
Yeah.
That sounds dramatic and like it's a lot, but I like what I do.
Right.
So there's a mindset out there that 80-hour weeks aren't a brag. They're a sign of poor planning if you don't like what you do. Like before you arrived, I was working on some content that we're going to record tomorrow morning.
Okay.
We're coming up with the concept of a weight class and how you actually go after government opportunities. It's an idea that I have that I'm now able to implement.
A weight class.
Correct.
Like lightweight, bantamweight, heavyweight.
Yeah. Are you swinging out of if you're going after a contract that's too big, it's out of your weight class. That metaphor. That's an idea that I had when I was driving around, and now I'm turning into content.
Oh, that's great imagery.
But I have to do it. I have to
right.
create the content and deliver the idea versus, other than that, it's out here in the ether. Nobody cares.
Well, and that's probably why if you go from 1.4 million down to whatever it is now, that ad value is exponentially valuable for those guys. Because, when you're leading people and when you're on the field or you're in the boardroom or what it is, or whatever that is, you really have to make sure that your information is conveyed correctly.
Correct.
And certainly in sales, if you can paint a picture inside their head, oh man, you're winning. Now I'm creating value right there. So having a weight class, that is immediately attainable. Oh, I get perfectly. I'm on board with you. Keep going. That's super engaging.
Well, and that's the power of metaphor.
Yeah.
Being able to use in sports, being able to use them. So many metaphors that I use in business relate to sports.
Yeah.
Because it's the same idea.
Right.
Like, for example, in business, it's an infinite game. The job is to stay in business. Whereas a finite game is like baseball. There's only 9 innings.
Yeah.
You don't add more innings. There's only 9 players. It's finite, right? If you can manage to succeed in the finite environment, imagine how successful you are out here in the infinite. I'm not limited to 9 team members in Skyway.
Yeah.
We could have 900 as we grow. But you have to be able to thrive when there's only enough capacity. There's only enough revenue for 4 of us. We have to make do with what we got, right?
Right.
That's a skill you learn from being in the finite game of playing sports. So there's another metaphor.
Oh, absolutely. You got to do with what you got to get. And I'm sure in the beginning there were lean years.
Yes, absolutely.
and those lean years are lean.
Yes, and many a time of like, was this a bad idea?
Yeah.
And we were joking earlier that like the idea of Skyway, I know that's not a bad idea anymore. But there are ideas we have using Foul Demont that we try it and go, that was a bad idea. Stop doing it.
Right.
Well, when you're first starting out, you can't stop doing everything. You have to figure out what works.
Yeah.
That's why that mindset makes sense. But the compounding effect of just learning over and over, does this work? Keep doing it. Does this not work? Stop doing it.
Yeah, don't do that anymore.
And it's hard to stop doing it. If you love doing it, doesn't matter. If it doesn't work, stop doing it.
Right. If you didn't get a hit, you need to get hits. Hits win, I'm a home run hitter. Well, you know what? You ain't touch a ball in 3 weeks.
That's right.
we need to have a different conversation here, son.
You're a home run hitter off the tee.
Right. You
That's
really
different.
looked good in January, but March is eating your butt up.
Right.
That's cool stuff. Now, with what you guys are doing and the personnel that you're doing with it, what's winning for you? Because we talk about this a lot. Win is not a 4-letter word. And somehow it got years ago, somehow winning is, no, I win. That's what I do.
Right.
I win. So what's winning when you're defining it for you? Is it a little thing? Is it a big thing? Is it lots of things?
That's a great question. It's lots of things. It's the short and the medium and the long term. So the win today was finish the things that were on my list.
Okay, that's a win. Check box.
Something as simple as when you're running a company, imagine the company's like, again, more metaphors. The company's like a brick wall. You can't move the whole company like one brick at a time. The whole thing has to move together. Right. The finance, the team, the leadership, the hiring, the customers, the content, the website, they all have to move together. So as a leader, you're touching all of them at the same time. So knowing how much capacity I've only got 24 hours in the day.
Yeah.
And even if I work them all, I'm only going to get so much. So I have to manage what am I going to do with the time that I have? And so that's the first win, is manage your day.
Okay.
Because you don't know if you have it tomorrow.
That is an intrinsic win or loss for you.
Correct.
So that's an inside you thing. Okay.
That's
so you start with you.
Correct.
That's your first win.
And then at 3:45 every day, we have our Skyway huddle. Again, more sports references, right? The leadership team, and because one of them's California, one of them's in North Carolina, one of them's on the other side of Florida, we get together on the phone and what did you work on today? What are you working on tomorrow? What do you need to share? It's 15 minutes. But that's our win, is that did we get done what we needed to yesterday or today? What are we going to plan on tomorrow? What's in the way of getting those things done? If we got what we needed to get done and we have a plan for tomorrow and we don't need any help, that's a win. That is a leadership team win. That's a company win. Because for our marketing director, for one of his, this coincidentally happened today, his project was to get an advertisement done. He got the advertisement done. It's going to go out tomorrow morning. That will generate opportunity for us, maybe tomorrow, maybe 6 months, maybe 6 years from now.
Yeah.
But he has to get the thing done.
Yeah.
So that's the win for the organization. And then the bigger picture is, okay, are we all moving? Then we get into the metrics of, are we having sales? Are we driving revenue? What's our churn for our customers? Are our customers leaving?
That's a subjective, the numbers. Right.
Now that's a zoom out, like that I check once a week. But to say, we're winning by keeping our retention rate low. Okay, that's a result of a lot of other things, a lot of other wins.
Right.
And so to me, it comes back to just the concept of discipline.
You work inside out.
Correct.
Not outside in. That's very military, by the way. That's extremely military. You didn't serve, right?
I did not.
No, you worked for the government. Okay, but that's that's also a very athlete thing as well. Getting it, especially going to college or pro ball, getting the athlete to work inside out is the first kind of step in the whole thing. Because as you rise up a level, in high school, there's that guy's talented, that guy's talented. You get to college, they're all pretty talented. You get to pro ball, man, stop. Come on. They're all talented. But it's the ones that start in that process inside out and really say, okay, what do I need to do today? All right. Start with a win first out. Get up on time or make your bed, whatever that is. And putting those little processes together, then you come together as a team, then you come together and play. And for you guys, what I'm hearing is your culture, going back to culture, it's a daily thing.
Yeah.
It's not, you're meeting every day. You have a 15-minute meeting every day with the whole company.
Just with the leadership team. They have their own team that they meet with. Yeah, so there's 4 of us.
Okay, and they'll have their own little meeting, I'm assuming. So it's very, very tight, granular examination.
Like we think of it like squadrons. Like we're a squad of people. That's how we operate. Small teams. Like again, Navy SEALs have small teams for a reason, right? Same idea. Anything more than 10 people, you can't keep track of each other.
Well, and it's not very nimble either.
Correct.
It's really hard to course correct. And what is your acronym again?
FAUDEMOT.
FAUDEMOT.
Figure out what works, do more of that.
Right. And that's easy to do when you have small squads.
Correct.
Yeah. When you get big, that's really challenging. And that's why you have coaches that specialize. The defensive backs are over there. The hitters are with this guy, infielders with this guy, and then you can come together as a team. That's fantastic. Now, do your people, you rely on your people pretty heavily. Talk about, because there's a difference between managing and leading, and there's a huge difference between managing and leading. And this is just one of the ways that I characterize it. Management is when you're accounting for people, and leadership has a much bigger scope. You trust your managers are doing what they're doing and you're with them, but you've got to look to the future. A leader has to look to the side, has to look at the competition, whereas a manager is really focused on what the internals are of those people.
Okay.
From that perspective, how does self-starting and discipline, and we're on this theme of intrinsic kind of motivation, how does that work with your group? Is that just an expectation? If they can't self-start, if they can't self-manage, they just weed themselves out? Or is that something that you're looking for in an employee? Does it ring to you when you find somebody like that?
There's a lot in that. The first thing I look for is people who are brilliant but humble. And
so they're sharp.
Right. They're right out of the gate, they're going to be sharp. But the bigger issue is, do they start internally with are they self-motivated? Well, if you're brilliant and humble, that humility drives you to learn new things. It keeps you. That's one of the reasons people stay brilliant, is because they're humble.
Okay.
So the idea of being a self-starter, that sounds like something you have to just, I'm going to need to get this task done. But it's a mindset of, I don't know everything. Hence the humility. So somebody whose their personality is humble. And interesting story, we had a new team member we brought on, didn't catch it in the first round of interviews, but in person we realized that this person was, they were not very humble. And they stuck out like a sore thumb.
That didn't fit your culture.
They lasted 3 days here.
Okay.
And it shocked them when I said that you're not a fit. And once I walked through why, they started to see the connection. And it wasn't that they were arrogant. They just weren't oppressively, no, that's the wrong word. How about at their core, they weren't super humble. And when you see people who are brilliant and humble, they stick out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
Because that is a phenomenal combination. And the way it helps us is that they're always looking to learn new things. So they will go find things to learn. So they're wired to be self-starters.
And you attract that now, I would imagine.
Yes.
Because that's a key tenet in all is that something you talk about? Is that?
The brilliant and humble is something we talk about internally, but we look for it. Like the last person that interviewed didn't even make it halfway.
Yeah.
Because they weren't, I don't think they were brilliant or humble, but they definitely didn't connect the dots as when we came back and said, hey, what about this? They didn't jump on it.
Yeah.
To jump on, when you give somebody a new puzzle and they understand that's a puzzle that they can solve, they'll jump on it if it's what they love doing. And because their humility tells me, I don't know this, but their brilliance, they can actually solve it.
Right.
So
it's not just raw talent. It's not just, I've got this person that's brilliant who can do this particular thing, but they're challenging to work with. And it's like having, a pitcher that's 6'10", that can, throw rockets, but nobody cares how hard you throw ball 4. Right. And nobody cares if you come in late and you're keeping the bus there because you're not there, and you're not a clubhouse guy. Now, there's a sliding scale, certainly in sports, because talent is talent is talent is talent.
Right.
That is what it is. And so you can take a guy that's got high level talent and you can deal with some of the arrogance.
To a point.
There's also a sliding scale the other way around, where you've got a lower talented guy, but we just play better when he's on the field.
Right.
We just play better. And it's one of those things, and I've coached guys like that, where it's like, he should not be able to win. He is too short, too slow. He does nothing right, but somehow we win around him.
Right.
And so it kind of goes either way, but there is a gradient. There's a point of no return where it's like, I'm sorry, dude, but you got to go. Yeah. Or it's like, we don't win enough with you on the field. Do you find that with this is?
Yep. And being aware, I tend to go on very much on the probably 75% brilliant, because we need people who know this stuff really well and they can understand. I mean, government contracting is very complicated. I mean, the average regulation is like 2,200 pages. There's a lot of moving parts to understand.
Do that again? The average regulation?
The Federal Acquisition Regulation, which is the concept that covers pretty much every federal contract. That one, and there's other ones, but that one is 2,200 pages.
2,200 pages? Yeah,
lots to keep track of. It's over 2,000.
Holy
maybe
smokes.
2,205.
So that's kind of the Bible, or the guide, or the manual, or 22. Yes, that is a nightmare to me, and you would have to be sharp.
Right. And the idea, though, is that there are people who are really sharp, but they're difficult to work with. Then we can't compound the ideas. I can't take an idea. Here's a great example, like this weight class idea. I introduce that to one of our team members. I know they're going to realize that's a cool idea, and they're going to add to it. They're going to add something, because they're brilliant enough to get it, but humble enough to know that, well, Kevin's got a great idea, I can add to that. Versus being arrogant enough to think, well, I should have made that my idea. So,
right.
How to make it about me?
They get all put out by it.
Right. That's the team part of it. Is if you can't be humble enough to realize that all the great ideas aren't going to come from me, and that's okay because I'm going to add to them. That's a different mindset.
No, that's 100%. And dealing with athletes for 30 years, the arrogant ones have the most delicate feelings. They're such babies. And then the ones that are there, those high talent guys, they're indestructible. Right. Emotionally, absolutely indestructible. In what you do, how does emotion play a part of that? Is it just, I mean, do you hunt big elephant game kind of things? I mean, is it a rah-rah kind of thing? Or is it pretty much just a steady state grind of process for you guys? Is there seasons to it?
There are seasons to it. I am a big fan of, this is going to sound silly, I'm a big fan of emotion just because we're humans. And if we take the emotion out, if you don't care about what you're doing, it's going to show. Yes. If it's just a job to you, it's going to show. If I'm emotional about, I want to succeed. I want to get
that
the
passion.
things done. Passion is probably a better term.
Right.
And so there are things that we do that there's passion behind them. And it's that whole thing of you're either all in or you're in the way. Yeah. Well, that's a comment about passion. If you really just want a job, and we've had plenty of people, they're looking for a job. Our culture, we're not looking for people that just want a job. And the people who are here, a lot of them could work anywhere. They're choosing to be on this really tight-knit team. So for somebody to come in who's not passionate, it's again, it goes back to it feels weird.
They feels weird. They can feel it too.
Exactly.
They don't fit. So, and I've been in clubhouses like that. It's like, I don't belong here. Right. It's not for me. All right. So, and we mentioned there's seasonality to it. Government contract is open year round?
Yeah, their contract's being awarded constantly, but the fiscal year goes from October 1st to September 30th.
Okay, so it's going to run on the money.
Right. So sometimes there are more windows, and business has cycles. People just as a general business rule, maybe as a general North American rule, in the summer, we tend to not do as much. Not that we're lazy, it's just our kids are home, we're on vacation, we're doing things, right? So work tends to slow down a little bit. We tend to get fewer clients in June than we got in May and October. It's just business. It's particularly in business to business, which is, because we're selling to other companies, we're not selling to individual.
You're a B2B.
So the idea of there's a cyclical piece to it. Some of that is just a business cycle. Part of it is government contracting. Part of it is politics.
Right.
I mean, every time there's a new president, they're going to change things. They're allowed to change things. They have the authority to change things. That tends to impact how government contracts work for a little while. And then we adapt to adjust to whatever the new set of rules is. New Congress comes in, changes some law that says you have to compete contracts like this, like that you didn't last year. Here's one. There's a limit called the micro purchase threshold.
Micro purchase threshold.
So what that allows for is government employees, not just contracting officers, any government employee with a government purchase card. It's effectively it's like a debit card that goes against money that they have. If they want to buy like water bottles for their office, or if they want to buy somebody a plaque for their retirement, they can just go in and use this card. It's a Visa card.
Oh, so you need to write for a PO or get any RFP or anything.
Yeah, they don't have to, it's considered competing because they walk out on the commercial market. Yeah. The limit on that used to be $2,500. Then it was $3,000. Then it was $10,000. That fundamentally changed how quickly government employees can buy all kinds of different things. Because think about buying something for a couple $1,000s. First of all, it's not peanuts.
No.
But now you can spend $10,000 on something. You could basically fund like an entire dinner for your entire agency on one purchase.
Right.
Whereas before, we had to compete it. We had to go put out an RFP. Much different. That little change, which happened, I think, like 7 years ago, just you adapt. We adjust. So,
good or bad? That change good or bad for you?
That's actually, depends on. As a taxpayer, it's good because it cuts down on so much of the process. I know as a taxpayer, you think, they're spending $10,000. You know how much work it is to compete like a $9,000 action? Like, what if you're buying 200 racquetball rackets for the Air Force Academy? That's more than $2,500. Yeah. Now you have to put on an art. They're racquetball rackets.
Right. At the end of the day, come on.
Yeah, it's rockets. It's just rocket science, right? So it's better for the overall process. For us, I guess one could argue that it made it simpler, therefore we're not needed as much. But again, that's a scarcity mindset. I believe in abundance. And at the end of the day, we will never run out of things to talk about. Yeah. There are so many layers of, when you're spending, no kidding, a couple $1 trillion a year, cut that in half. It's only $1 trillion. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
There's plenty of opportunity. And having a mindset of this isn't my only opportunity to do something. I have more opportunity in this space than I could ever chase.
Right.
And which took me a while to get to in business. Because the first time you lose a couple deals and your sales don't work and you can't figure things out when you're first starting out and you're like, I have to get this deal. You get sales breath. Yeah, I have to get this one deal.
Yeah, you start chasing applications, chasing contracts.
Right, you start chasing the wrong
coaches start chasing players they need instead of attracting players they need. Yep.
You want to find a needle in a haystack? Be a magnet. And they will come to you.
Exactly. They'll come to you. No, that's 100% right. So in sports, we've had some changes in the collegiate ranks here in the last few years with the NIL and all that kind of stuff. So a little similar kind of thing with that. And good or bad doesn't matter. It is what it is.
Right.
So you kind of deal with it and kind of go. So Jamie Shoup, I've known Jamie for years. He's the coach there at Florida A&M in Tallahassee. Phenomenal guy. Did a podcast with him. He talks about control the controllables.
Right. But
you also have to know what's, and this comes to your leadership, you also have to know what's going on out there. So, maybe what is maybe up for, you get some new leadership coming in, like we have new leadership for the country. What are they likely going to do? So you can, as a leader, say, I think I need to read a little bit more on this. Because as people are working within their as the infielders taking ground balls, the outfielders doing their thing, they're working on what they need to work on. Your people are working what they need to work on. But we have to, we got next week too. We got next season too. How does this all, and that's a lot.
One of the leadership qualities to be aware of is one of the jobs of the leader is prediction.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
Right.
And it's always going to be a guess because you don't know. And the way I get my head wrapped around it is that you're always going to be wrong. If you think it's going to be 17 new clients, it's never going to be 17. It might be 15, it might be 25. It's not going to be 17.
Right.
Let go of that. But you have to have some level of prediction of what do you think is going to happen. And then you just have to own it. And you're going to be wrong. Welcome to business.
Yeah, welcome
to life.
If you don't want that, don't do it.
Right.
Don't come over here. Just stay an employee and there's nothing wrong with that. And absolutely nothing wrong because you're encapsulated as an employee.
Right.
And you don't get hit typically with that kind of stuff. If you want to be in business, you want to be an entrepreneur. And, it's that alpha dog mindset. And you don't have to growl to be an alpha dog.
Right.
Many alpha dogs, hence lupos, they lay in wait. Some of them are quiet. You never know they're coming. So if you don't want to be in business, don't be, because it's an unpredictable environment.
Right.
Wouldn't you say?
There is the word, what's the word? Uncertainty. Mm-hmm. It's the word of the year I've been hearing on a lot of like the news. The economy is uncertain. And I go back to, I believe it was Jim Collins' book, one of his books. He talked about the stability we had from like 1950 to about 2001 was unprecedented in the history of the world. Like the fact that the world is uncertain shouldn't be news to anybody. Business is always going to be uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
What you can do is predict based on the information you have and then be surprised when you're right. That's the hard part.
Right.
Holy crap, that worked. Okay.
That sounds like I'm prepared for many different outcomes. So that screams to me advanced scouting report.
Right.
My advanced report, going into a game, playing team XYZ and not knowing what they do well, what they do poorly is, for me, it makes me itch.
Yeah.
I can't stand it. And as a college guy, as a former college coach and now working with, many different players, lots of them don't do that. I don't know. I have no idea how they put a team on the field.
Well,
because the first 3 innings, we're just feeling each other out. You can be your butt kicked. If I have a report, I'm winning the first 3 innings.
Right.
Every time, but it also gives me those reports. And to your point, having this, looking in a wide scope, taking it all in and making a prediction, one of many, and then surprised to be right. You're never right, but you're also never not wrong.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because you're looking at it, you're gathering data, and it's usually you're not completely blindsided.
Right.
With your just legs swept. So from a sports perspective, that scouting report is only a guide. You can't go hard line on that and say, we're going to play them this way. There may be some things you can. But from the business perspective, the controllables and what else you can't control. If you're leading this thing and going back to your vision as a leader, you're often probably not completely blindsided.
Correct. We as leaders, we have the right to, well, I said it badly. We're going to lose sometimes.
Yeah.
But we shouldn't be surprised.
Right.
It's our job to not be surprised when things happen. Yes, okay, there's a COVID, there's a hurricane. Actually, not even a hurricane. I'm not surprised that hurricanes hit Florida. Why? Because they've been hitting Florida a long time.
Yeah.
The fact that they hit my house, and blessed we actually didn't have any damage, but we could have, I shouldn't have been surprised by that.
Right.
So as a leader, again, that's the prediction thing.
Yeah.
What is likely to happen?
Right. Well, that's the intelligence gathering. You don't stop. And some people can get very micromanaging and forget that as a leader, you have to look at the big picture.
Yeah. What could happen?
What could happen, right? I can easily count what they're doing or hire somebody to count what they're doing. Take in the big picture. And that's how businesses certainly win. And it kind of talks to you. The goal of business is to stay in business.
Right. That's the infinite
Not necessarily
game.
to make money, but to stay in business. The money will be a product of that.
Yeah. The way we say it is that we're not in business to make money, but if we don't make money, we're not in business. So our primary function is not to just generate revenue. Our primary function is to cross that bridge, is to bring context to both sides of government contracting. But we can't do that if we don't have sales,
right?
If we don't have revenue, if we don't have customers who pay us every month,
right?
So being aware of what you're passionate about, what are you actually trying to solve, the money will come from that.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you have to, again, you get the discipline piece, you have to figure out what works, do more of that, You have not being surprised. Don't have a plan. Have a primary plan. And there's all kinds of stories, all kinds of quotes of, oh, if you have a plan B, then your plan A is not good enough. Well, that's great if your plan A works.
Right.
But if your plan doesn't work, there's another saying that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
Yeah.
But what if it actually kills you?
Right.
What if it puts you out of business?
Right. Yeah.
Whoops.
Yeah.
So be aware that there are businesses are complicated. What you think is going to work, what if it doesn't?
Right.
Imagine, and here's another one of the phrases we use. Imagine the worst case scenario, worry once by making a plan. So worst case scenario is we get all of our customers leave and we have no recurring revenue. I actually have a plan for that. And I put it in the back of my mind. It's on a piece of paper. It's lightning bolt would have to happen for that to kick in, but I've thought about it.
Yes.
That's part of the prediction, is have a plan.
Right. And that's why not everybody needs to do this.
Correct. Exactly.
Because it will give you ulcers. It will keep you up at night if you take it seriously and you do it right. Same way on the sports field. This is why coaches have gray hair at 35. The good ones, where they're grinding and they're up and it's, they're home. They go home to their family and they're thinking about what they should be doing at work. Yeah. It's hard to separate that two. It's challenging. Let's talk a little bit about the teamwork and collaboration that you guys work in the vein of this thought, trust. So trust takes on a very different meaning outside of the military, outside of sports, and into business. And I wrote in my book, I talk about the currency of trust, metaphorically, obviously. And a coach and an athlete will implicitly trust a coach because of who they are.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that trust is earned. That's a currency that we trade back and forth every day. Every day we trade currency back and forth, and that's trust. The athlete is trusting that I'm going to be able to be the right person to guide them to improve, to guide them to the win, whatever the improvement may be.
Okay.
The coach trusts that the player is there to win, they're coachable, they fit the program, attitude and performance and all that. And that currency is traded back and forth all the time. How important does that similarly move over to the collaborative teamwork and trust in your side? Can you just trust that your people are going to do the right thing, or are there checks and balances?
So our first core value is we trust the 99%. And the idea behind that is that we don't have a whole bunch of regulations on how you're supposed to be as a Skyway team member. We trust that most people just want to do the right thing. So the trust the 99% means that we trust you're going to do the right thing. We trust that this relationship is going to be effective, worthwhile, two-way street, all those kind of things. Going back to the currency piece, the way we look at that is, are you adding to or subtracting from the relationship? Every interaction we have, human to human, adds to or subtracts.
Right.
And so if you're focused on compounding the relationship, that's going to increase the trust. And that is a huge part, because if I don't trust that you're going to get something done, I'm going to add all kinds of parameters about when I assign it to you.
And now I'm micromanaging.
Right. And now and not only am I micromanaging, how about this? If I don't think you can get it done and you feel like you're being told that I believe you can't get it done, now you feel micromanaged, which means you see my body language. Now you're on me. It's
right.
Like, and just let me do it.
The message that you're sending beyond the words.
Exactly.
Right.
So just being aware of, I'm trusting you to get this done. And simple things like, when it comes back to me, here's what I'm looking for. Not do this, then this, then this, then this. I'm like, this is the result I want. And then I'm trusting that if you don't know how to get there, you're going to ask me, or you're going to ask for help.
Right.
That's a simple thing of trust. So when I say to you, I'll put on the coach hat for a second. I need you to be able to get on second base. Either you're going to hit the ball well enough to get there the first time, or you're going to get on and steal, or we're going to bunt and get you. That's the result we're looking for.
Right.
Let's agree on that. And if the player knows this pitcher and knows there's no way I'm going to be able to do anything with this pitch that's going to get me on second base from hitting, we better build a plan.
Yeah, bump me down.
Tell me that.
Yeah, bump me down.
Exactly.
Right.
Let's communicate that.
Right. And many times in sports, and going back to the arrogance thing, you mentioned about high level talent, that intelligence and humility. There's a point at which an athlete's got to say, I need help.
Right.
And that's we deal with athletes, and I'm sure people do the same way, and people get lost. There's three things. Hey, people do two things. You develop them physically and you develop them mentally. No. There's three things. You develop them physically, you develop them mentally, and you develop them emotionally. The physical part is by far the easiest.
Yeah.
By far the easiest. The mental part is actually the next easiest. Either you want to learn how to apply or you don't. But the emotional one, that's the tricky part. That's the tough one. That's when the leader really makes the connection.
Yeah.
When you take the Peter Pan out, and then the pitcher can, on the conversation, hey, you got any more left? And he's got to be authentically be able to say, you need to give me some help out here. I'm getting my butt kicked.
Right.
Now we've got some emotional integrity. We've now gotten to a point where we can, instead that arrogant, emotionally immature, no, I got it. And then he goes out and gives up a bomb.
Right.
So in your world, that trust kind of goes in that vein. It's working back and forth. And if you got people, it won't hit the road like ours hit the road. It's probably different, but pretty important.
So one of our other core values is we do what we'll say we will do.
Okay, that's a trust factor.
Right, and the subtext of that is not, that isn't a got you. That isn't designed. In fact, I tell people during their very first, when they join the Skyway team and I go through the 7 Cube with them, I say, I think it's core value number 4, do what we say we will do. And the idea behind that is it's so you can say no. If I say, hey, Leo, can you get this done in the next 5 minutes? And you can't.
Right.
Core value number 4 allows you to say to me, dude, I've never done this before. I can't do it. I don't know if it's going to take me 5 minutes.
Right. You don't want an order taker.
Exactly. I want people to be able to say, you're expecting me to do what I say what I will do, and what you're assigning me is something that I can't do in the time you've asked for.
Right.
Or I've never done before, or I don't know how long it's going to take.
Right.
But that conversation doesn't happen if you feel like I just have to do it. Because now, as the employee, as the team leader, as the team member, the follower, whatever you call them, as the athlete, you're like, I'm just expected to just figure this out. Yeah, how's that going to work out?
Yeah.
Are you getting their best from them doing that?
Right. You got to get them to be able. It's hard for the young ones. It's hard because they just want to do it and just but then they walk away going, I don't know how to do that.
and then what's really scary is that they get lucky and do it, but they don't know how they did it. And there's all kinds of arguments of, you need to put people in uncomfortable positions and watch them fly. Okay, those make great movies, but 10 times out of 11, that doesn't work out that way.
No, because I have a very truncated time schedule. I have to win now.
Right.
I have to win right now.
Yeah.
And you're right. The Rudy movies and things like that, those are great, but that's not the reality of what we actually do on the field. Let's talk about communication as far as you guys go. When we're on the field, communication is the number, and when I talk to coaches about this especially, it's a thing that they don't take serious enough. They always run to what they know. The information, I can teach this. I can teach that. I don't care about that. How well can you communicate? And I learned this because I was that guy. And one of my mentors, he's long since passed, Fred Hatfield was watching me coach, and I was coaching in college and long-winded, and I finally walked off and got everybody together. And I said, Coach, what'd you think about that? He goes, damn, man, just tell them what to do. They don't need a science lesson. You got to communicate better. And I'm like, holy crap, I thought I was doing good work out there. He goes, look, great coaches say very, very little, and they paint a vivid picture in their head. You need to work on communicating in a statement.
Yeah.
And then he presented it to me in a statement, just like that. It's like, oh, you mean like that? Yeah. So communication within, now you have all these meetings and all this kind of stuff. How does communication work within your process? Is it similar to like a good athlete, a good coach, where they're communicating as little as possible, as little as needed to get the job done? Or is it different than that? Because you have to make more of it.
It can be both. Again, one of our core values is we'll risk over communicating.
See, I didn't even read your core values.
They're on the website.
But it's amazing that this is pinging back and forth because
that's why I built them.
It reeks of athletics. It reeks of sport. Keep going.
You got to write them all down, right?
Yeah.
And within this bubble, the ability to effectively communicate and the subtext of we'll risk over communicating as long as we understand what's happening. And so once you understand what's happening, okay, then you stop. But I'm not going to assume that you know what the overall goal is. I'm not going to assume that you know everything I know. I'm not going to assume you know everything you need to know. Remember when I said before about the leadership, we have our huddle. Yep. One of the things is, what do you need to know? What's in your way? I'm asking you that so you can tell me, hey, Kevin, how about this actually happened? They needed me to upgrade one of the subscriptions we have to a podcast feed to get more, so we can allow for more subscribers. Only I can do that. That's in the way. They have to. It's in
their way.
No, it's in their way to get their job done.
Right.
They have to communicate that to me.
Right.
That idea of open communication. Did I need to know that? Maybe they could have told somebody else, but they're like, no, I'm going to go right to Kevin and say, I need this. That risk over communicating, I'd rather they tell me that and have me not need to know it than the other way around.
Right.
So that's a little bit different. The other side of this is one of the sayings that we follow is, if you can't explain your concept in one sentence, no one will listen to you.
Right.
It's really, really hard to do that. To get, like, when you ask me, what does Skyway do? We are a bridge between government and industry, between government and government contractors.
That paints the most vivid picture and explains the whole thing.
And people either go, why do I care about that? Which means they're not our customer,
right.
Which is 99% of people, by the way.
Yep.
And then there's the 1% go, we're a government contractor. How do you do that? But I need to be able to get that in one, and that didn't happen overnight. That's years in the making.
No, in having a couple of businesses going right now, like I do too, that is very difficult. And I've got friends that are helping us. That's too long. That's too long. And it goes back to the Fred Hatfield thing. It's like, hey man, you got to get it down. You got to distill it down because I want to. No, not yet. You'll be able to, but not yet. So there's a method of communication. Are you inundated with emails, or do you save that? Is your communication philosophy to save that 3:45 team meeting? Is it all going down there, or are people pinging you all day long?
That's a good question. Most of our communication happens in the few meetings we have. We have a team meeting every other week, every other Tuesday. We have a leadership meeting every Wednesday, and we have a sales meeting every Friday, and then we have the 15-minute ones in between. And I don't get that many emails.
Because you meet often enough.
Enough. That's the trick.
Right. Not over meet, not under meet.
And that's different for every company.
Yeah.
I'll give Einstein credit for this one. Things need to be as simple as possible, but no simpler.
Things need to be as simple as possible, but no simpler.
It's really easy to oversimplify. It's like, we only need to have one meeting a week. Yeah. Do you? I mean, does your team know what's going on? Do they know the core values? Have you talked about them enough? Like, I repeat the core values pretty regularly. Like once a month, I cover some of these. Like that's why I know them so well. I talk about them all the time. Yeah. And one could argue that why do you have to keep repeating them to your team? Because I want them to know them as well as I do. I want them to know that we are serious about these. When we say we don't know, I had one of our team members, I'm all excited here. One of our team members actually told me, he's like, I think we're knowingly wasting time on this.
Oh, that's got to get you fired up.
Yeah, he was right. I'm like, you know what? We are. Because I added some step that made sense like 2 years ago because he was updating a report. And we realized that the information in that report was already covered in this other meeting we have. It's like, why are we doing it twice?
That sounds like buy-in.
Exactly. So he buys into the core value and he brings it to me and I'm like, yeah, let's stop doing that. And it makes me excited just talking about it. Because I'm like, that's how you improve the company. It's how you improve the team. That's why work is fun. When your leaders will listen to you because you're like, okay, this core value, I'm seeing it play out here. I want to stop doing this. Can I stop? And I'm like, yeah. Most places, they're going to hang on to it because they're like, my job is to keep doing stuff. And they keep throwing stuff in their bucket. And before you know it, they have a whole bunch of meaningless work and they're just busy.
Right. That busy doesn't win.
Nope.
No, taking ground balls to take ground balls is one thing, but taking ground balls with purpose and intent is something completely different. And it does get where the ego of the leader can get touched up a little bit when it's one of their ideas.
Exactly. This is my idea that they shot down.
And you got to have a leader that's got to say, you know what, I'm in the way.
Right.
I'm in the way of this. Because it's not about them. It's about that process or that thing. And they'll over-personalize. That's a big problem in our industry because, the coach is the one in front of the media. He's in front of the camera. It all falls onto him, that kind of thing. But the ones that are able to take criticism. So we do a thing. It's a military thing. An AAR. You know what an AAR is? After action report.
Yep.
Well, in baseball, this is
hot wash.
Hot wash. That's another one, right?
You spray down the plane afterwards.
Exactly. I do that after every interaction. I have a little thing on my phone, and what are we doing? That's how I program the workouts. Program what we're doing, because I can't rely on my memory. My memory is flawed because there's too much stuff going on,
right.
And we do these little AARs. With your frequency of the meetings, that sounds like little ongoing after action reports of these meetings where your course correction, instead of going here and wasting fuel to course correct back here, it's a lot of small course corrections, which when you do that athletically, that's how you win.
Yeah.
Making
Small
holistic turns wastes time, wastes fuel, and gets everybody squared away. Is that also a little bit of a training thing? When you're doing this, is it kind of an automatic training thing for you guys?
It is. A lot of it's just, once you see what works, you want to do more of it.
Yeah.
I mean, habits are usually built around things that people like doing. When they like doing things that work, they'll do more of them.
Yeah.
And so when you figure out what works and these small adjustments, like, okay, here's another sports analogy. We actually have the sales scoreboard. We legit call it the Skyway sales scoreboard. And every week at the sales meeting, we look at how are we doing it. The scoreboard doesn't lie. Who's actually closed deals? Are we on plan for our goal? We have a company goal and we have individual goals. And sometimes an individual will hit enough of a goal that he'll cover the whole company for the month.
Right.
I've done that a few times. Now, Troy, he's our VP of marketing and sales. He's done that a few times. He's doing it this month.
Yeah.
His sales have been enough for everybody, but it's a scoreboard. It's an accountability tool. It's a communication tool. And we make small adjustments. Again, it's every Friday we're looking at that. And we say, okay, we're actually like 92% of our goal for the month. And so Foul Demott, figure out what works, do more of that. We knew the things that we did 3 months ago, because it takes a few months for marketing to turn into sales, right?
Sure.
Those things are working.
Right.
So let's keep doing those. But every week we say, okay, are we going to close these by the end of the month? If we're not, should we push them to next month? What do we do differently? Again, that's an after action report of what do we have to change.
Right.
This is the same idea of the weekly check-in with the athlete.
Correct.
Your goal was 5 hits. How much of that was your control? How much of it wasn't? Like, for example, the week between Christmas and New Year's, not our fault we didn't get any sales. That was out of our control.
Right.
It's like, most people are not laying in bed on December 28th going, I need to get a government contract. That's not where their head is, right? But on January 2nd, they're like, okay, 2025, we need to get, and we blew the doors off for January.
Yeah.
So, but that goes back to your question about the cycles. You have to be aware of, is it within our control for us to have a lot of sales this particular week?
Right.
Like 4th of July week is not a week when you're going to get a lot of sales. I know that because I've watched it for now 13 years. So be aware of how much of this are you controlling, how much are you not. Because the parts that you control, do more of those things.
Control them.
Yes, and learn how to control them more.
Yeah.
Because if you're just looking off of, if you're what they call those lagging indicators, the hit is a lagging indicator.
Right.
A sale is a lagging indicator. It's a result of something. How did you identify that particular client or prospect? What did you show them that made them want to buy? How did they actually close? And then how did they actually pay you? That's turned into a sale. You notice there's a bunch of steps there.
Yeah.
Same thing with getting a hit.
Yeah.
Your mindset when you walked up, like, did you know what pitch you were going to get? Were you guessing? And okay, it was a fastball. I got lucky.
Right.
Or did you actually think about that ahead of time? So many variables in there.
We call that approach. Are you taking a plan into the at-bat? Are you paying attention? Is he giving away his pitches? That goes in. There's a big difference between swinging and hitting. A monkey can teach the swing mechanics.
Yeah, I can swing.
Now, hitting, that's different. That's very different, So taking it to that next level. But the way you're describing this is good run sports programs. There's lots of little interactions. Lots of little interactions. Not big, grand speeches.
Yeah.
Like you'll see them, they'll take the kids down and they'll talk for 25 minutes and in left field after a loss. I'm like, what are we doing? Nobody's listening.
Yep. And
that's for you standing up. That's not for anybody on a knee, especially the competitors. They don't want to hear it. They don't want to get their butt kicked twice. I got my butt kicked on the field. Now I'm getting chewed out for it. You know,
Right.
for me, it's those little conversations in BP coming up to an athlete for 30 seconds or in high school, you know, in the hallway, you know, or whatever. Those are the meaningful ones. And so you guys have these small little interactions that keep the course correcting quickly. So you're always moving instead of a big, wide sweeping turns that waste fuel and time.
And there's not a lot of evidence of the big move being the difference. Yes, there have been a lot of books are written about this business did this particular pivot at the right time.
Right.
But let's pick one. It just popped in my head. Netflix. People think they've blown up because their stock is like tripled in the last couple of years. Netflix has been around since 1999. They tried to actually sell to Blockbuster because they were struggling so much.
Right.
And then Blockbuster was like, nope, we're fine. See how that worked out for them.
Not so good for them.
Right. But they muscled through and pivoted and tried this, tried that. I mean, they were originally mailing CDs.
Yeah,
and then they went to being actually able to do the technology caught up, the fact they could actually stream, and then they made their own content. All along the way, they've made small adjustments. They tried something. Again, I don't think they used the Faldemont idea, but they figured out what works, and they were doing more of that.
Right.
And if you look at whatever happened to Google Glass, great example of something that didn't work, so they stopped doing it.
Right.
For whatever reason, I've heard, I don't know exactly what, but there are lots of products that you're like, whatever happened to that? The company said, we tried it, didn't work, we stopped doing it.
Right. That doesn't mean stop innovating.
Right.
But that means don't waste time in things that are wasting time.
Exactly.
To your point. That's awesome, dude. Well, let's get down to a couple of things here. Let's dive in a little bit to Kevin right here. Ready? Pet peeves. These are the things that that as a man that's responsible for a very large budget and lots of people, and this is your name's on this thing.
Right.
Give me and I'll go first. I'll tee you up. You ready?
Okay. I got a long list.
A baseball just sitting there on the field, like baseball litter, baseballs, drives me bananas. Baseball litter. And I'll go to a college game, and this happens even in college games, and you'll see them playing catch and things like that, and there's 15 baseballs lying around, and I can't stand it. And I'm twitching. I have to walk away. I can't stand it. That's how you roll an ankle.
Right.
And also, it's not a good look.
Yeah.
It's a bad look. Pet peeves.
So the first one is knowingly wasting time, which is why it's a non-negotiable.
So that pet peeve is on the...
Yeah, that's on the list. And a lot of these came from... A lot of the core values and keys and non-negotiables came from the company that I created. I realized this is the people that really have thrived here. Let's write these down. So like the no gossip one, I didn't just choose that. I realized it, right? The risk over communicating.
When you say you realize that, it happened.
Right. I realized that we had people on our team who don't gossip. And by the way, that definition of gossip is complaining about something to someone who can't fix it.
Yeah.
So if I called my wife in here and said, hey, this light's too bright. Leo put the light up. She can't do anything about that.
Right.
And so how does she, now you're wasting her time, you're wasting my time, and you're giving her the impression that we didn't take this seriously.
We talk about in sports, never bitch down.
There you go.
You need to, if you're going to complain up.
Right.
Because then there's those guys at the end of the bench by that water cooler. They ain't on this team long. Because Misery and company love to chat. Yeah, we don't complain down. You complain up. Keep going.
Yeah. So the knowingly wasting time, one of my biggest ones is getting back to zero. What I mean by that is like the website's supposed to work. That's assumed, right? So the website goes down. Well, zero is the website. So getting back up to zero, that is a big pet peeve of mine. So what can we do to avoid going below zero? Because as an entrepreneur, I'm not trying to fix things. I'm trying to build something. Now, the company's fixing a problem. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about internally to the company. Spending all of our time doing whack-a-mole and just fixing things is miserable.
Yeah.
Because number one, you're not growing the company. Number two, you're not looking at your customers. You're looking inside the company. You're fixing things all the time, right? That's why we have backup plans. That's why, imagine the worst case scenario and worry once. That's why I had those conversations with our team. What happens if the website goes down? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
We have a plan for that. That happened last week. GoDaddy had some brain fart and our website went down for like 18 hours. And the plan, because I had the plan already, I emailed our clients and said, hey, small business life, this happens. And half of them emailed back and yep, I get it. It's a big deal. And then other ones I posted on LinkedIn and said, hey, I apologize that our website's down. We're working on it. And we all talk about small business life being hard. Yeah, this is that. We're working on fixing it. And a couple of them actually replied and said, yeah, no problem. Thanks for letting us know.
See, that's a quick panic. Panic quick. Panic early.
Right.
If you're going to panic early. But when you panic, have the plan.
Yeah. I panic before I even have to is the point.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew exactly what I was going to do when that happened.
Right. You assumed in building the website, this will go down at some point. So when it does, what do I do? And you're good with that. You got it squared away. With this reeks also or rings also to time in baseball, and it's another little bit of a pet peeve of many coaches. Be on time.
Right.
Don't not be
that's
on.
One of mine.
Is that one of yours too?
Being punctual is the ultimate form of respect.
I agree with that 100%. And that for me though, that's only half of it. There's actually a practical part of it as well. So let's say we're going on a road trip, right? We're going on a 2-day road trip, 3-day road trip, whatever it is. Bus leaves at noon. I need everybody there 15 minutes early. Okay? So you need to be there at 11:45. Yes, that is respecting everybody that they got there. Ultimate form of respect. Sometimes kids don't think that way. Sometimes they don't think that way. For me, what the kids don't realize, I've been on the phone for 3 hours the night before and 2 hours the night getting weather reports and all the kinds of, that 15-minute window right there, that is my go, no go time. And I have to have everybody present.
Right.
At some point in that time, I will come out of the office and say, load up, we're leaving. Or say, stop what you're doing. Here's the next plan. But I have to have everybody present for that. Now, of course, with what you do, I've got them physically there. That's different.
Right.
So, and I can't, if you're not going to be on time, you better call somebody. You better send them a text or something.
But risk over communicating.
Risk.
I'm telling you, I might be a little bit late. Even if you show up on time, communicate that you might be a little bit late. That happened today for our huddle. 2 of our team members, one of them, and he's had a doctor's appointment, and the other one, she wasn't feeling well. So they texted me 45 minutes ahead of time and said, I'm probably not going to be there because this appointment's running long. Yeah. And they ended up being there.
Yeah.
But they're risk over communicating out of respect for the fact that the team is going to be here. We have intention for this 45 minutes. Our strategic intent is to get smarter during this 15 minutes by knowing what each other is doing. And we can't do that if we're showing up late.
Well, that also sounds like they trust you're not wasting their time either.
Correct.
It's a 15-minute meeting. It will be purposeful and valuable. Don't meet to meet.
Right.
Meet because we need to do stuff.
Yeah, meetings can be, that's a Peter Drucker quote, meetings can be the trappings of executive leadership.
Oh.
It's like we're
going to have a meeting to meet so we can find out when the next time we can meet. And bureaucracy, man, that drives you crazy. Any more pet peeves? Any other things?
So, obvious ones like lying and working their way around problems that inappropriately, meaning that you're finding a solution that actually serves you instead of actually solving the problem. Right. So the way that one of my favorite sayings, and this is a Kevin Jansism, people who are standing in a mud puddle complaining about being wet. You don't, what's that saying that everywhere you go, there you are?
There you are, right.
So standing in a mud puddle and they're saying, man, it's so frustrating, my feet are wet. But you're not willing to change anything. Yeah. And so I see a lot of that in people that come in through interviews. We have clients that we have fired because if you're not willing to take the knowledge that we give you and use it in the way that and then you're going to complain when you didn't win the contract because you didn't change, or you're going to complain that you didn't get this opportunity because you didn't change what you were doing. I can't help you. You're not coachable. Right.
So not only do you fire employees if they're not a fit, you fire clients if they're not a fit as well.
That is one of the nice things about being, I say nice things about being in business, but also being a leader of the company and having a really healthy culture is that we've had both clients and team members that my employees came to me and said, this client isn't a fit for us. And they gave me a list of reasons. And that led to the client being fired. Right. And then likewise with one of the team members and again, I asked, I want open communication. Of course. During this probationary period, one of our leaders came to me and said, I don't think this is the right fit. And I saw it too, but that's the open communication piece is people who are not willing to change their behavior, even though they're causing it.
Right.
It's shocking how many times, and I'm sure I've done it. I mean, again, it's a maturity thing, right? You realize, am I causing this?
Yeah.
So that being able to ask yourself that question of, am I the root cause of this problem?
Right.
And it's something simple like, I get up at 5 o'clock every morning. By early afternoon, I'm getting kind of tired. Like, I shouldn't be. Why is that? Because I'm staying up too late.
Because you're staying up too late. Exactly.
The root cause is if I'm in bed by 10:30, I'm up by 5 o'clock.
Right.
But that's the root cause that I caused. I choose when I go to sleep.
Yeah.
That nobody's telling me, nobody's coming over my shoulder telling me it's time to go to sleep.
Right. No,
I'm an adult.
That's exactly when that's emotional maturity. That's also integrity, all those character kind of things. Yeah. No, 100% on that. Do's and don'ts. Definite do's and don'ts in your experience.
This is going to sound kind of silly, maybe. The biggest do is do stuff. Do something. Act.
Don't not do nothing.
Yeah, it's very easy to wonder if something will work. Again, figure out what works, do more of that. That means do something.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be wrong. You're going to do stuff that won't work. But you don't know that until you do it.
Right.
And so that idea of, I want to think about it. Can we think about it? Why? Try it. Try and sell it once. If somebody says no, try another person. If 3 people in a row say no, okay, now you got to try. Now you know not to try and sell it.
Right.
But you don't know that. You think the people aren't interested. And this really, you can again hear me getting animated about it, because it's very easy to plan. It's very easy to dream. I call it being a spreadsheet millionaire. Like, when I get 1,000 customers, this will happen. But you're not going to get the 1,000th customer until you get the first one. And you won't get the first one until you do anything.
So many, from Maxwell to Tony Robbins, it is a theme that threads all of them. You can plan all you want. There's a point at which you're going to have to get out of that chair and you're going to have to go talk to them. You're going to have to go do something to make stuff happen. In fact, you'd probably rather do stuff and fumble around and mess things up than just sitting in the chair and planning.
Yeah, no idea will get you anywhere unless you do something with it. It's just reality. Right. So that's my part. That's the do's and don'ts is do something. Right. The don't, I'd say the biggest one, again, it's that time piece, is don't do things without awareness of time, because your tasks will never run out. There's always more to do. There's always more opportunities. There's always something, but you only have so much time. Right. And so I set stopwatches on all kinds of stuff. I when I'm doing a prospecting on LinkedIn, I give myself 10 minutes. When I every morning I spend time with the Bible, 5 minutes. Because I can get sucked into this and spend 6 hours on it, but I need to get it done, but I need to make sure that I'm spending enough quality, intentional time. Right. Don't rabbit hole. Exactly. Right. 5 minutes is enough to read a verse, absorb it, and make myself better for it. Yeah. Whether I'm leading people or doesn't matter what I'm spending my time on, I need to make sure that I'm aware of my time. Yeah. No, and that's certainly for you, time and money are linked so intimately. All of us only have so much time. Right. So whether you're getting paid by the hour or you're getting paid by the deal or you're not getting paid at all, you only have so much time. Right. And the time vampires out there are numerous. Oh, especially now, they're in our pockets and it's a simple choice. Put it down. Right. You know, they talk about the new generation and all the, they're locked up and that one of the problems is social media. No, it's not. It's a choice. Right. Put it down. Just put it down. Move on. Do something different. I agree with you. One of the best ways to handle that is it becomes a habit. Yeah. We pick up these bad habits, replace the bad habit with a good habit. Think of a different habit. No, right. Don't just eliminate something. It's easier to, what's that saying that only a new habit can subdue an old habit. Yes. So put a new one in place. Right. Replace it. Right. Exactly. 100%. Standout qualities. Is there a one thing an employee will have, or customer, or somebody you interact with? Is there kind of a one thing that you see that's like, okay, that? Is there like, when athletically you're looking at somebody and you're looking for something? So I worked for the Mariners for many years, had a great guy that I worked for, John Ramey, who there's two kinds of baseball scouts. There are the guys that know what they're doing, and then there's 40-year-old adolescents. John knew what he was doing. So I spent a lot of time with him. He's going, I want you to find something. Is there something that you like
that this guy does. Don't look at the entire thing. The entire thing is easy to spot. What's something to look at? One thing, this is years ago, and he just got drafted this last year off that high school team at Calvary, was their catcher. He went in the 10th round. And I watched him as a freshman going, that is a loose, fast arm. And he was a little kid. He was skinny, ninth grader. But that arm is loose and it's fast. And he was a 10th round draft pick, this last year. Is there something for employees or that you look for? Are there are things that perk your ears up?
Their ability to listen. And I don't mean listen to instructions. I mean listen to people. Listen for cues. Listen for, have the emotional intelligence to pick up on body language. To actively listen. That's I don't want to say it's the differentiator, but think about how many people you know who you feel like they actually listen to you.
Instead of waiting for their turn to talk?
Right. And you can see their brain churning of, what am I going to say?
Right.
Or you can see them wanting to talk at you, not with you. And think of it like reverse charisma. Like the people who...
Wait, say that again. Reverse charisma. Oh, right. Active listening would have to be that way.
Right. They want to talk to you because they feel like you're going to listen to them.
Right.
That is something I look for actively. We coach for it. I've learned it. I'm still learning it. It's not a human nature. We are, what's in it for me? That's how our brains are wired. That's how most people think, is I'm thinking about what am I going to say next. And so it's very easy to fall into the trap of not listening and owning the fact that if I listen, like you'll notice there are a couple of times, there's a pregnant pause where I have to think because I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
And again, I've had to learn to do this. I'm not a savant. Like I've literally had to force myself to stop thinking about what I want to say and listen to. Here's a really good example of why this is important. When one of the things I do is I'll be an expert witness in a federal case.
Right.
And so I'm being deposed by an attorney. What sometimes will happen, again, which is a stressful scenario, but the lesson in this is when the lawyer is asking you a question, as a human, you start to think, oh, I know where he's going. I know the line of questioning. Now, stop it. What did he ask you? Just answer that question. If you watch, Law and Order, watch how lawyers behave, and it's very easy. You get emotional when you think about where they're going. It's like, no, what question did they ask you? Just that question. And if you think in terms of that, again, don't treat it like it's a deposition. But when someone's talking to you, what if you narrow down to what did they just ask you? And you'd be surprised so many times you're like, is there a question in there?
Right.
Or you'll hear 3 or 4 questions and go, okay. And if you're listening closely, you'll even pick out the tone and go, is that a question or a statement? It's amazing how much more you pick up, but it's an active choice. And so that's probably the single bit. When I see people that can do that, we have several people on our team that just naturally do that. It's amazing to me.
Yeah.
That they can just pick up. In fact, one of my good friends, Kevin, that's his superpower, is he has emotion. He's one of those few people that's wired with emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
He can just hear the questions, and he will bring questions out of me that I didn't realize I even asked because he was listening to what I said. And sometimes we just
actively listening, not trying to guess.
Not trying to guess, not thinking about what am I going to say, not trying to, well, where's he going with? No, what are they saying to you? What's their body language saying to you? Are they saying, yeah, I like that?
Right, that's
cut off. Did you hear my tone? Did you hear my body language? Did you see any of that?
I'm done. Yeah, I'm done with you now, right?
It's like, obviously you didn't.
Are they in or are they back? Are their feet crossed? Yeah.
And then to think, okay, give yourself a second, let that pregnant pause, and before you go, well, it doesn't seem like you're very into it, say, oh, well, how so? And shut up and listen.
Yeah.
And that is a skill that's exceptionally hard to keep strong every day. Trust me.
It is.
I'm not wired that way.
No, and it is interesting you say that. I have a little ritualistic, habitual thing that I have to do at least 3 times a week. I try to do it every morning, and it's partly yoga, but it's a meditation process. And one of the things is it's a guided meditation. It is one of the first things I start with is I talk about a filter. Pause. Stop for a second. Give it a pause before you talk.
Right.
One, it allows the conversation to stop, but it also allows me to think about how I'm going to answer it instead of just that.
Right.
And then you'll end up saying something you shouldn't have, or maybe you say something that makes no dadgum sense whatsoever. Elon Musk does that. He has these long pauses where you can tell he's thinking about it.
Right.
That's pretty dadgum cool that he's able to do that, because I would be very uncomfortable. But that active listening thing is so incredibly valuable. And certainly for athletes, because the pace of sports moves very quickly. And athletes do have a difficult time when they stop being athletes, because the pace of life is so much slower.
Yeah.
And that's why one of the reasons why you see them derail many times. But to really take it in and pay attention and actively listen to what he's saying, that is absolutely a skill. Career killers in your world. Now, with us in the athletic world, there's many different career killers. One of them is ego.
That's a good one.
That ego will definitely run amok, especially when that ego doesn't match with your ability. Again, performance and attitude kind of thing. I can measure both of those. From an athlete's perspective, we're always measuring their performance. And sometimes they'll overestimate their ability to perform. And it's like, well, wait a minute, big guy. I know what you're talking about, but look at here. You're hitting 108. And one of those, not making that adjustment, that can easily be a career killer for us, is that ego that overestimates their ability. Is there something in business that you found that's a career killer?
It's probably just not keeping up. The language that I recently used is passing the meringue test. And
passing the meringue.
So I really made this up. So meringue test. So meringue is like the food, right? Yep. It looks solid when you look at it in a picture, but meringue it's just fluff, right? And so the meringue test is you look solid, but you're not. And so in business, you've been doing this for 30 years, but have you kept up? Are you brilliant and humble? Have you learned new things? Have you stressed, or have you just literally been going through the motions for 30 years?
Right.
Like, have you worked on your emotional intelligence? Have you worked on your professional speaking skills? Have you worked how to write, learn how to write better? Do you read a book a month? Or are you constantly picking up new information? That's how you pass the meringue test. And it can be interesting because during the interview, or just watch how people talk to each other let me rephrase that. Watch how people talk to you and interact with each other when they're insecure or they don't, or they're arrogant and think, oh, is there a meringue test problem here? Meaning that they're arrogant because they don't actually know what they're doing.
Right.
And so,
and they're deflecting.
Right. And so there's the meringue, if you look and you're just meringue, like you're actually not very solid at all.
Right.
And so from an athletic perspective, you may be 6'10", but if you haven't worked on the mechanics of your throw, you can only throw. When I was coaching, call it that, back in 10U, there were lots of kids that would just naturally throw hard, but they would throw their arms out because they would throw. I'm like, why are you still throwing? Like, you're not icing. Like, you're not doing the other stuff. Right. And so they're meringue because they have a natural talent, but they're not building on it. They're not letting it be something solid versus a meringue. So the visual of them, again, if you eat a meringue pie, you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Because it looks and then you're like, there's nothing there. It's just air.
It's just air, right.
Exactly.
There's nothing substance. But that's a great point, because I would imagine that would absolutely kill careers if you're not keeping up, if you're not growing, especially in a leadership position. That's the kind of the person that needs to be doing that.
Yep.
Because everybody's watching. The message that you're sending goes far beyond the words.
And even as an employee, I look on your LinkedIn profile and you've been doing this for 20 years, but I see that you've just been doing this for 20 years. Like, have you published anything? Have you written a book? Have you been on podcasts? Do you have any content that's added to your profile? Have you had different roles? When I Google you, do I find anything other than just you've been there for 20 years?
Right.
Like, that doesn't tell me. So that's a huge meringue red flag for me. When somebody wants to work on our team, and it's like, I look at your profile, I look at you and look at your resume, and you're like, oh, I've been here for 20 years. I've done all these things. I'm like, they're all the same thing for 20 years. You did the same thing 20 times.
Right.
That's different.
Working and growing are not the same.
Exactly. There you go. Even better.
Yeah.
So you need to grow out of being meringue.
Yeah. Oh, that's great stuff. Advice for new hires. So again, soar to soaring, right? And this really is most impactful for the ones that are getting out of high school, getting out of college, that they're ready to go. I'm trained.
The best one for me, actually a couple of them. I say the first one is be hungry. Is that, and there's a difference between just being hungry for, hey, I want to be important. I want to do stuff. No, be hungry for knowledge. Be hungry for context. To ask questions and don't ask the same question over and over again. Like ask different questions. And my favorite one, I got this from one of my mentors. And I would meet with him once a week, and I ask him questions constantly. And I'm like, I'm wondering, like, why does he stick with me for so long? And I asked him, I said, why is this? This seems like it's still fun for you. And he said, because you don't ask me the same question more than once. You ask me a question, you bring me a puzzle, I help you solve it, and then we solve a new puzzle. It's like you're constantly growing. It's like if you asked me the same question and didn't change, being a mentor would suck.
It's not mentorship then.
Exactly. I'm just babysitting.
You're babysitting.
But the fact that so come with questions and then do something with them.
Right.
And that's one of those things I noticed over my career, the times that someone has given me information and then I used it and I went back and thanked them.
Right.
And just because that's a nice thing to do, I guess. But they're shocked that, oh, you used it. And I'm like, well, it was great advice. Of course, why wouldn't I use it, right? Well, it's because a lot of people, they gave that advice and they didn't do anything.
Sometimes they ask just to ask, I think.
I feel like I should ask a question, therefore I'm going to ask one.
Right. So be hungry. Always be in training.
Yeah. Always be in beta mode.
Always be in beta mode.
Yeah,
you're a college graduate. That don't mean nothing. Correct. No one cares now. Right. Mom and dad care. Nobody cares.
You've now joined the other 100 million people in the workforce who have a college. I'm making up that number.
Yeah, whatever that number is.
Some giant number of people who have a college degree.
Right.
And so how do you differentiate yourself? Is you constantly are growing. You're constantly learning. You're asking questions. You're getting, again, figure out what works. Do more of that.
Yeah.
If your leader allows for you to collect more information and learn from them and they're willing to mentor you, lean into that as opposed to waiting for them to lean into you. Because while they might do that, I as a leader, I'm looking for people who have their hand up, not people that are waiting for me to come find them. Because I can hire somebody.
Now I'm policing people and not leading people.
Right.
Yeah, there's a responsibility, and they think the word follower is a bad word. That's not a bad word at all.
Correct.
The leader has to have followers, but followers must engage in following.
Yes.
You have to engage in following.
Otherwise, I'm dragging you.
Right, or else I'm dragging you, and if I have to drag you for too long, I'm going to put you down.
Yeah.
I'm not going to drag you no more.
Yeah, now you're a sea anchor.
Exactly right. Well, dude, that is outstanding. I appreciate the time that you spent. This is great stuff, man. Thanks so much.
You are quite welcome, Leo.